constantly shifting through the time-space continuum, Metron's three disciples observe the universe from the Mobius Couch.
Take me down to the Paradise City, where the grass is green and the girls are pretty. Take me home. Oh, won't you please take me to the Mobius Couch, a time-space interdimensional vehicle from which your three hosts talk about Guns N' Roses from 1989 to 1991. No other time in the Guns N' Roses spectrum continuum do we discuss.
Yeah, just that.
Just that. So whatever that is. Sweet Child of Mine, A December Rain, and back again. That's all we talk about.
November Rain.
November? Is it November?
Rain.
Oh,
November Rain is correct.
Let's welcome the people. You have three hosts here tonight sitting on the Mobius Couch. One of them is yours truly. I'm Alessandro. Hello, everybody. And joining me as usual are Joe.
Hello. Hi, Al.
Hey, Joe.
I'm Joe.
Yeah, just that classic repartee we're known for. And of course, Patrick is here too. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Al. Hello, Joe. Good to be here.
We've known each other for years. I know that doesn't come through in our.
We're not just meeting.
Yeah, in our stilted, unnatural dialogue, but we've known each other for decades. I just want to make that clear. All right, but today we're actually not talking about Guns N' Roses. Sorry.
Oh man. Yeah.
We're talking about Far Sector, a comic about Green Lanterns. Well, I guess a Green Lantern.
A Green Lantern.
Right. It's I think it came out in 2019, about 2020. It's a pre-demi. We're in a pre-demi comic just before the pandemic. Written by, of course, Hugo Award-winning author N.K. Jemisin, and with art by Jamal Campbell, who I'm sure has also won awards and is a human. And this talks about Sojourner Mullein, the Green Lantern of Far Sector, which is the farthest sector from Oa. Oa, of course, the police state center of the universe.
Police state center of the universe.
Yeah, from which executive overreach and police overreach just spreads out from those big-headed lantern lords on Oa.
Yeah, that know exactly what to do for everyone.
Yeah, they know what ring to give to what person. To use extrajudicial powers to punish evildoers across the universe from Oa. So this was not is so it is a, I guess, continuity comic, but it actually came out in DC's Young Animal imprint, which was founded by My Chemical Romance frontman and Umbrella Academy writer Gerard Way. Young Animal, of course, I'm assuming is a reference to the manga magazine Young Animal, which is known for adult manga and porn adjacent, is what that magazine's known for. It's kind of like softcore clothed women, but scantily clad. And then adult comics like Kentaro Miura's Berserk, a dark fantasy adult manga. So I'm assuming that's what Gerard named DC's Young Animal after. Because otherwise it would just be one hell of a coincidence.
I don't know if you're right or wrong, so I can't help you.
All right, but so Far Sector did come out, DC's Young Animal comics, and let's get right into it. So Sojourner is a new Green Lantern, and she's in this eternal city in Far Sector.
It's essentially a city that doesn't have emotions, so they have this like anti-emotion drug, I suppose. Not really sure how it works. Data that they can download into the people. And then essentially it's the city that's been peaceful for thousands of years, and since a huge war that almost decimated all three of their planets. So it's like three different races all existing on one planet now that it's kind of torn apart. So it's these floating cities. And there's been a murder. So it's like a big deal that someone murdered or got murdered, because there hasn't been a murder in 500 years. So like they called in a Green Lantern, that would be Sojourner, to, I guess, investigate or help figure it out, since it's something that they're not even used to dealing with. But that's the main plot. I mean, like there's other subtle things, but they pretty much stick to just the murder mystery and like what's going on with the people. And there's more things that get uncovered as it goes along, but that's basically it.
Quick side note before we get in about the creative team. So N.K. Jemisin's real hot right now. She wrote the Broken Earth trilogy, which is like the 5th season, and those books, they're being made, I think, into an HBO show. So she's probably about to blow up even more. But she's like a big kind of like current sci-fi writer. One, I think Hugo and Nebula.
Not within comics, though, right?
No, more novels.
Yeah.
I think this was her first comic.
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah,
that she wrote. So anyway, like basically A-lister author, because she's like a hot, super
hot upcoming author, and they brought her in to write a comic for the first time. How do you think she did as a first-time comic writer?
Oh, I think she did great. There's definitely some rough spots that we'll get to when we actually talk about it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and that's what I would say too.
Like,
I think she did a really great job overall, but like
great.
there are some spots where you're like, you're not a comic writer. Okay, that's okay. Kind of thing. Like, just like little things like that peeked out at me, I feel like, as I was reading, but nothing jarring that would like make me not like what I was reading, though.
No, I thought she honestly did a great job overall for like the 12 issues or whatever. Yeah.
I thought she did a really great job of developing the protagonist. She was like, it was very much focused on developing that specific character and that character's interactions with the world she was in. But yeah, I agree with you. There were some moments where it was lacking, like during the climax. On the surface, it looks very much like a superhero comic book, but it doesn't really behave in the same manner as your typical.
Yeah, and Jamal's art certainly lends to it looking like an awesome superhero fight comic book too. And then most of the fights get resolved either rather quickly or in a way you're not expecting, sort of thing, which is where her writing probably comes in. But it's just, there's times when it's like a huge fight and you're like, oh, this is going to be a huge comic book fight at the end of a book, and then it's just kind of like, and I'm going to smash through into the ship and talk to somebody and the fight's over, kind of, and you're like, oh, interesting, okay, cool, I like it. But at the same time, it's very like, anticlimactic in terms of the way comic books are usually portrayed.
Yeah, I do. I'll say I found refreshing kind of the way Sojourner, I'll call her Joe because her friends call her Joe, and it's shorter than Sojourner.
And your friends. Yeah, and your friends.
We're friends. But the way Joe uses her powers, I found kind of refreshing. I mean, we just read the 90s JLA with like Kyle in it and stuff. And this is not the typical just a giant green fist doing a thing. And
there's a lot of really interesting Green Lantern constructs. There's like at
one point she
even
puts on a
subtly
Gundam, like mecha armor around herself, which was really cool. So I think they use
that's been done before, but not well. It's not been drawn well. I think like people try to do like, oh, a big robot suit, but it just looks generic and bad, and actually out of a manga or something. Like it looked amazing, kind of thing. There's a lot of very clever uses of the way the energy is forming around her. If it's building something, it's very dynamic. It looks like her mask isn't just like materializing. It's like got swirls of energy kind of like forming her costume or whatever she's about to do. There's a lot of really cool uses of the ring's power. I think it has the sound effect spliff when she makes things a lot, which I thought was interesting. But other than that, it was pretty cool. I think the design of her character is really awesome. Like she looks great. The costume looks great.
I liked the costume design in general. I thought was really strong.
Yeah, I could kind of do without the belt. That's the useless belt that's hanging off of her hips. But other than that,
that was a cool. I don't know. I kind of liked it. I thought it was a cool.
Really? I mean, I don't know. It just seemes like pointless. But
I don't know. Sure. Whatever you can hang whatever you want across those Chun-Li thighs. I'm good for that. I don't care what you hang there. I liked how she used her. I think her entire costume anyway is a construct, because I think later she
all of them are.
But I do like how she gives kind of different accents to it. Like there's one issue, I think it's 3 or 4. She puts on like almost a military cap and cape, like almost kind of like
I think it's a cop's hat and a cape with like with the ropes for rank around her shoulder kind of thing.
Yeah, but it looks.
I think it's from her police. It might be military.
Or it looks like an early 20th century kind of like Taisho era Japanese like police.
Yeah, it does. It does kind of feel. Yeah, it does kind of feel.
So I like little accents like that. That happen. I mean, they happen throughout the issues in kind of in different ways. But I like how they just kind of add little embellishments of.
We're already kind of talking about it, so I'm just going to mention it. But I really like the design of her ring and how it looks different, and how it even when it was given to her, it was like a regular ring looking Green Lantern ring, and but when her fingers touch it, it already starts to morph and change into the glass the little black glass dome sort of in the center with little green lantern symbols around it. I thought it was really cool. And also when she's not using it, that black area is just black. And then when she is using it, it lights up as the green lantern symbol. That's really cool. Just really small, subtle things. And the amount of times he found an excuse to put her fist towards the front of the camera, like, and really highlight the ring was really cool. Like, and it didn't seem forced. It was like, oh, all right, awesome.
But since we're on the topic of it, I really enjoyed when she makes the constructs. Like the first time she makes one of the constructs, it's to make a chair, and there's like a little alien sitting in it, and she goes, "Oh damn it!" And she thinks it away. So it's almost like it's her like when she flies, there'll be like little Superman constructs floating out of the room.
Yeah, little Superman, and there's a John Stewart next to her.
And then when she there's the scene when she transforms into her costume, and it's a bunch of Sailor Moon.
Yeah, there's like a little Sailor Moon like construct floating around her.
And then when
like,
she
it even has like ribbons wrapping around their leg. Like the construct looks different throughout the panels, is what I'm saying.
Right. Yeah.
Like it looked like a Sailor Moon transformation sequence going on next to her while she's also transforming.
Yeah. So
I was like, bravo.
Yeah.
That was kind of my point to like the very interesting use of power constructs. But go on, Patty.
Yeah, but I think it's a very clear just display of her newness. Okay, well, whatever. But yeah, they're just showing that she's new at using it and can't quite control.
Well, I don't even know if it's that so much as
I think it's just subconscious. Yeah,
like you've never really thought about how the ring works. I guess. Well, actually, I guess maybe it is the fact that she's a rookie and probably no one trained her how to use this ring because it's the only ring of its type. So I just enjoyed that you get to actually visually see what she's probably channeling in order to make the ring work in specific ways. Even when she's breaking up the protesters, like with the big walls, it's like little peace signs are on the walls, and like little flowers are growing out of it.
It's like bubbles, but like there's stuff going on around it, and like
it's like her subconscious is manifesting in the constructs, I guess, is what long story short of what I'm saying.
It's also interesting her not being able to recharge her ring like the other Green Lanterns. They just use their rings for whatever they want all the time because like, you know, they're just like, well, I can just charge it.
Right. Yeah.
In 2 seconds, you know, like it doesn't need, but she has to measure, like, is it worth using my ring right now versus just taking a taxi? You know, like, should I fly back home to my apartment, but I might need my ring in like an hour, you know? So like, it's kind of interesting, like how she's traveling via normal means a lot and like kind of saving her ring. There's even a point towards the end where she's just wearing normal clothes and somebody's like, why are you wearing civilian clothes?
Right,
and she's like, should I be worried? Like, does your ring have charge right now? And she's like, don't worry about it. You know, like kind of thing. Like, and I was there. It's really interesting use of the ring. It makes it more fun, sort of. Yeah. It's the first time you've ever kind of read it like this.
The one aspect of it that I didn't quite get was, so they go out of their way multiple times to explain that this ring is not as strong as other rings. And I wasn't sure what they were trying to, I didn't know if that was supposed to reflect kind of the experience of, I mean, Jo being a Black woman, maybe a Black woman being told throughout her life, like, you're not as good as these other people, or you can't achieve.
Yeah, because it seems like the potential is still there to be as strong as the other ones.
Yeah, so I don't know if it was meant to be commentary on like that experience, or if it was just a narrative, just whatever decision. That part I didn't quite get about why
maybe it was just the way I read that, and granted I didn't read into it too deeply like you did obviously, but like the way I read that is just like it's the classic like Superman's too fucking powerful, we got to find a way to like cripple this down a little bit to make the story interesting. Like it just seemed like it was kind of like a, why don't we make her ring different and like slightly less powerful so she can't just do anything all the fucking time, you know, like it just solve every problem in 5 seconds kind of thing. That's the way I took that. But maybe just like as a story device to make it a more interesting story based on how much power she has kind of thing. And less of like a commentary on her skin color. But that being said, there's a lot of that in this book. And maybe that was thought about.
Clearly.
You know?
First of all, so her name, well, I mean, Sojourner is, must be, I think it's pretty clearly a reference to Sojourner Truth, who was an abolitionist and women's rights advocate of the 19th century. Every comic issue starts with a quote from a famous person, many of them, you know, civil rights or Black artists. I think there's like a James Baldwin quote, Zora Neale Hurston. I think there's also a George Carlin one who is not a Black civil rights leader.
But he's like well known as a vocal opponent of all things that are unequal, you know, in our country. back through his comedy.
Another cool thing I liked that they did was not all comics, but most of the comics, the first panel is a film reference.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. It almost took me out of the story a little bit. I'm gonna especially the one where it's like her zombies. And the one council guy. No, not the zombies. When they're
the 60s.
Yes, that one
dream
exactly.
Girls looking
and they're like smashing their faces together, and it's very
Anyway, I did like the film.
Well, the one that took me out, the film reference that really confused me was the Independence Day one, because she's dealing with aliens, and then all of a sudden it switches to her in a different scene, and that was the one that
was jarring as well.
I like.
Once you pick up on the idea of it, the Matrix one was not bad. That didn't bother me.
There's like a zombie one too. Anyway, it was just fun. Yeah. I liked the homages to different films. All right, well let's get into the let's talk a little bit of plot.
A little bit of plot.
Damn that. Okay, a little bit of plot. Actually, a little bit of world building. So cool thing.
A little bit of world building.
Okay, this is where I want to give props to our girl NK.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked the setup of a world with multiple sentient species in it. I thought that was cool. How you had the meat people. So meat, plants, and computers were all sentient, developed sentience in this world. Or two, I guess there were two nearby planets developed these three sentient species. So that was a cool setup.
Yeah.
Another part of that I thought was cool was the idea that their AI did develop sentience and was seen as like an equal. Well, we'll talk about how equal they actually were seen, but politically they're technically equal to the other two biological sentient species. So that whole setup was really fascinating, and I enjoyed that because I don't know if you ever read the book *Sapiens* about like human development. But one thing I didn't know, or maybe didn't really remember, so at a point in time, there were multiple human species on the Earth, just like living together. And I kind of remembered it as like a stepladder of like Homo erectus, Homo ergastus, Homo sapiens, whatever, Neanderthals, and then sapiens.
No, there's multiple.
But there were like
Homo sapiens.
Tens and hundreds of thousands of years where there was overlap and like multiple human species together. But then maybe sapiens acted nasty and killed everyone. We don't know what happened, if they killed or fucked everyone dead.
I'm pretty sure they did shrooms and then they developed weapons when they were
maybe
high.
That's what happened. Either whether they fucked or killed everyone,
they killed everyone, and then there's a certain amount that fucked Cro-Magnon Man out of existence.
But the main thing is I find fascinating that idea,
because that can be found in your DNA. You know what I mean? Like that amount.
Yeah,
like you can literally find out if you're like part of the group that had sex with the not quite humans.
We are. So I think European people have all have basically 2% Neanderthal. So we've been Neanderthal fucked or whatever in the past. But I find that idea fascinating because like all our worldview now is just like we're the only smart things around. Except for the aliens Patrick's afraid of, but
I'm not afraid of them. I mean,
okay, that he embraces that Patrick,
which he says on record right now.
Anyway, wrapping all this ramble up, but the main point is I just wanted to say I find fascinating that idea of like more than one sentient species at a time.
Yeah, it was great
in place. So I thought that was a cool little world building choice.
It was also, I mean, as you were saying, Jemisin's brilliance brought that into existence. But I mean, like that was one piece that I was like, you can tell she writes novels because it's not just about like Green Lantern goes to space and there's a murder, let's just make up a race of people that are dealing with a problem. Like there was actual thought put into like this world that she's on. You know what I mean? Like way more thought than
it's insanely developed. Like it's so developed.
It's got like a really long history. Like there's like the planet itself. Well, call it a planet, but like these platforms that are now a planet itself is very interestingly thought out. Like there's a lot going on. The races are unique, yet still like and identifiable. Thank you. Good job on the art too. But really good.
Yeah, I loved her. So Averup, who was the plant man council member who becomes Joe, who sort of befriends Joe as she's
We didn't really talk about the council, but there's a council in charge of the planet, and they have representatives from all the races that are sentient, and so basically they're in charge of everything. And the big underlying plot line going throughout the whole book is whether or not they should continue to have this like emotion canceling like effect on all their civilians, or if they should turn it off. And there's drug users using a drug called switch off that turns it off like black market style, like against the will of the populace kind of thing, or against the law.
And so another plot point, I guess we haven't hit yet, but so the Poem City exists because these species in their emotional state blew up their homeworlds.
And then through coming together and ending the war, they decided to get rid of emotion, which caused the problems in the first place, so to speak.
I think it's also interesting the way. So, what did the three sentient species develop on these two planets? So it's the Na, who are the humanoid winged people, and then the At, which is the AI that the Na developed. And then is it the Ketopli? Ketopli, they're the plant people. But so originally they worked together. Well, I guess the original contact, the plant people kept eating the winged people, but they sorted that out. And it says that they worked together to like help each other develop. And then the cloud cryptocracy showed up. And
so there was a fourth alien race that came in and like actually caused the war and played them off against each other and started the war.
So that's what was interesting about the cloud cryptocracy. Going back to how this seems like there should be a lot of action, but there's not. The cloud cryptocracy did not use physical force to take them over. They used misinformation, and they basically pit the three races against each other. And that caused this civil war that ended up with both planets exploding. And so the city Enduring is literally a giant planetoid city that's made out of the remnants of their two planets. So I just thought that was really interesting, that the history of it and how the invading alien force took over by just spreading misinformation and disinformation.
Yeah, I mean, we already touched on this, but there are a lot of references to current and past American political proceedings in the comic. We towards the end we get to outright voter suppression as they turn off servers so that the AI citizens cannot vote. So, there are some parallels with recent history. I just wanted to point something out about Jemisin's writing. I really liked some of the voices she gave. So the plant people, Averup, the plant councilman who becomes Joe's friend, they're talking about like the history and all that. And he makes a comment about when his people first met other biologicals, there were misunderstandings, etc. And he says, it was difficult to remember that these creatures, so bold and bright, were not for eating. And like, I just love that phrasing of how he's just like so poetically talking about these wonderful, bright creatures that were also just delicious. And they wanted some of. So I like how she wrote these aliens. And the dialogue she gave them. One criticism I had for our girl NK, and I'm sorry, girl, but I thought the way they depicted the emotionless citizens was hit or miss for me, because they make a big point of saying, well, they act out emotions but don't feel them. And but then why? So there's a lot of scenes where you'll see them angrily shouting something. And I know we're supposed to understand they don't feel the emotion, but then why? I just didn't get, I didn't.
Because it logically conveys how they're feeling or what they're trying to do or get their point across.
I just would have preferred them to actually
be like robotic,
like aesthetically. The one exception are the AT-ATs. In that case, I get why they would act out emotions, because being artificial beings who don't have emotions, I get why they would affect them because they're copying biologicals. But why the emotional biological ones are like, don't do that, we're going to stop you. Oh, but I don't feel that. Well, then I would have preferred just an aesthetically emotionless person saying.
They do feel it, though. That was kind of the point Sizzin makes, is that you're so rational controlling your emotions. If like, I can still feel my emotions. I get angry. I get pissed off. I know that if I didn't have this. And I think that's kind of, you see it with some of the other police officers or peacekeepers Like some of them are genuinely afraid of Joe. I think it's it's kind of like that Christian Bale movie Equilibrium from the early 2000s where it's, supposed to be no emotion, but if the characters all have no emotion, then the story is just going to be really, really boring.
It would be really dry.
So I think
I understand the choice of like making them play out their emotions even if they're not feeling them, kind of thing. Like that's what I'm kind of trying to say, because you're right, it would be sort of like rather boring.
Because there was like the one scene, the big plot is that there's a murder, that's the first murder that happened in 500 years, and the guy that got murdered, Joe, runs into his widow, and she is a proponent to make switch off legal and to get rid of the emotion exploit. And Joe's confused by that, and she makes a comment about how she can't even grieve, but like when she says it, she still looks sad. But I think it's just the fact that it's like they know the emotion's there, they just can't feel it all the way.
I don't know if she looks sad. She does look sad, but I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, does she look sad, or is it more frustration that she can't feel sad?
But even frustration is still like a type of emotion, sort of. So it's just, I get your point though, Al. I get the criticism because it is the basis of the story is that they're not supposed to have emotions. But I think it's the fact that it's bubbling under the surface and that the emotion exploit doesn't completely cancel out emotion is why you kind of have the even interest in doing switch off and the uprisings and stuff like that.
It just felt a little clumsy to me, but anyway, none of this matters because everybody's doing the emotion drug anyway. You find out.
Yeah, that's true. So you find out most of the council's on switch off a lot, and like switch off is like running rampant throughout the city too.
Another thing I wanted to talk about was Joe's character. It was kind of funny because, all right, so went to Princeton, Marine, cop, Lantern. She's kind of like a bizarro Jack Ryan. Do you guys know who Jack Ryan is? He's like not John Grisham, Tom Clancy.
Tom Clancy.
Tom Clancy.
Yeah.
But Jack Ryan's like a white dude's like wet dream of like he got an MBA. He's got like 8 PhDs and MBAs.
He's super smart.
He's also the CIA,
but he's also the action star.
And he's he's just like the best, and like basically like a white dude's just boner of what he wants to be. And so Joe's kind of like the bizarro version of that, where she's like a black woman, but also is just like Princeton, Marine, is just like the best you could possibly be. So it was I kind of laughed at when you found out what her background was. I was like, all right, she's kind of like the Jack. She's like the black Jack Ryan version of, she's just like an amazing. And she is like, I actually liked her character. I thought she was pretty awesome. Cool detective, just like badass warrior.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other trait I really need in a woman. She's just had it all. I mentioned her Chun-Li thighs, arms, just shredded arms.
Yeah, she's ripped.
Like, perfect woman. But I just wanted to make that she's like a woman Jack Ryan. And I thought that was
with that beehive haircut.
It's a very Janelle Monáe inspired look though for that beehive.
Yeah, no, it's great. No, I like it. I like the whole look. I like the whole thing.
Oh, I love everything about her. That's what I'm saying.
That
like
fucking belt.
I'm kidding. But this entire story, like the story's good. It's obviously a commentary on, the ills of society and things like that. And that's what this entire story's about. But for me, I was just all in for Joe. I thought Joe was one of the best comic book characters that's been introduced in I don't know how long. Like back to her background though, I kind of had a different take on it. I felt like, so it's interesting because this will have to change it when she's brought more into mainstream, but her origin, she witnesses 9/11 happen when she's like a teenager, and that inspires her to want to help people.
Well, that's Jack Ryan. Did you ever see Shadow Recruit? Yeah, 9/11 happens, and so he joins the Marines and then becomes the CIA's best.
Okay.
Haven't you seen Shadow Recruit?
Oh, no. I mean, she sees 9/11 happen. She's like, I want to make a difference. She studies really hard, valedictorian. She gets a letter that she gets accepted to one of the Ivies, Princeton, but then she also has a letter to join the army. And she's like, you know what? I want to make a difference in the world. I want to be a hero. I'm going to go serve my country. And all you see is her serving in the Middle East, and she meets a little boy and they become friends. And the next panel, she sees a little boy.
Yeah, it's real fast, but yeah.
Yeah, he's missing an eye.
He has his arm.
His arm's gone. Yeah. So she's like,
and they're burying bodies on the side of the road. Like they're burying people. Yeah.
So it's like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was. This isn't how I want to
It seems
help.
to me like her, although she is badass, quote unquote, like by doing all those things, like what she's doing is trying to find the right avenue to outlet for her wanting to make a difference. And I think that the Green Lantern Corps is that last
but
hope.
that's also what I meant
that it's
by
this,
like
that maybe it's this.
But that's what I meant by bizarro Jack Ryan.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
she's like a mirror of, because Jack Ryan's just like a red state hard on of like awesome white man. But she's the kind of the bizarro image of like, well,
yeah, she does all those things that Jack Ryan does, but she's disillusioned by all of them.
Right. Exactly.
Her partner as a police, when she does eventually become a police officer, that was like one of the last things that like straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And he like pistol whips somebody and like for no reason kind of thing. And it's like police brutality, and she witnesses it, and she's torn with the fact that she didn't do anything to stop it. And like she reports her partner the next day or whatever, but the guy might die, and she's torn over that. And like it's this whole like, I tried being a Marine, didn't work. I tried going to law school, didn't work. I tried being a cop, didn't work. Like none of these things fill this void in me to be like the hero that I know I should be, or the difference I could be making kind of thing.
I wanted to go back to an earlier comment I made. So one instance where I thought the emotionless thing was cool and done interestingly was there's a protest where city guardsmen are about to fire on protesters. And Sojourner, Joe's out there trying to stop them and everything. And that's a case where, like, to resolve that conflict, at a certain point, she basically makes the argument of, like, if you fire on them, I'll use my Green Lantern ring and destroy all of you. And the people just say, oh, yeah, okay, that makes logical sense. We'll stop what we're doing. And that was a case where, like, an emotional police force would have continued to just, like, fire. But the emotionless alien version was like, okay, I see your argument, and I'm just going to act accordingly in an emotionless way. So I thought that was actually a good way to portray the sort of emotionless citizens of the city. I thought that part was kind of interesting. The council members are, so there's like our dreadlocked Adonis person. Whose name is like he who whispers in your ear for the 10,000th time on the bleeding image or whatever. They have like long names. And he and Joe have kind of like a little fling going. One of my favorite moments in this is, I know this isn't a visual medium, but she's at his apartment and finds out he's on switch off and basically hitting on her. And they frame the shot so that like she's looking at her panel, like studying
her little iPad
down.
And
basically her eyesight is like at his waist where his dick
she's
is,
looking at his dick probably.
The next panel is just her eyes like wide open, and she's saying like, oh, this man's going to be a problem. And
it's simultaneous with her realizing that he's hitting on her, and then also she's staring down at his crotch area, and then she's like, oh shit, this guy's going to be a problem. And you're like it could just be the situation, what's going on, but also her eyes are pointing at his crotch. So, I mean, maybe he just has a big dick. We don't know.
Yeah. So I just...
Also, that was one of the most terrifying parts of the books to me. When she's like, oh, shit, you're on switch off. And he's like, yeah, I am. And he's like smiling. I was like, oh, shit, is he going to fucking kill her right now? Like, or, well, attack her because she's a Green Lantern. But you know what I mean? Like, there was a specific...
Yeah.
It was right when you realize, like, people are using switch off, and then also like higher ups are using switch. You're like, holy shit, the councilman's using switch off. Like, so it was one of those moments where you're like, that's the cliffhanger of that issue. And you're going, is the next part of this, is the opening of the next issue going to be a huge fight? And no, they just dance. Have a good time.
Yeah, I didn't get threatening. I mean, I got that he was going to hit on her. Yeah, I don't know.
It was just the zoom in out of his face. It's like a full page of just his face smiling, and he's creepy, and it's all purple lit. And I was like, I don't know. There's something about it that I was like, that's very threatening.
I mean, he's not as threatening as Steve Rogers is as a romantic partner.
Oh, no, not at all. No. Well, again, 5 seconds later, I'm like, oh, no, he just wants to dance with her and feel emotions. Never mind.
Yeah. All right. But anyway, the next council. So then the at council member who ends up being the big bad villain, of the whole thing is at Blaze of Glory, who's the AI representative.
There's so much of the villain in the end that it almost doesn't make any sense, sort of. Like, so they're kind of struggling with, like, so you find out through the story that they've kind of done this multiple times. Like they've rebooted their society like multiple times, and everyone just kind of goes along with it weirdly. Like, so they kind of like, they have these crescendo moments of like, maybe we shouldn't be on this emotion exploit anymore. And then it's suddenly, and it like culminates to like a protest or something happening, and they always shut it down. And then there's always some sort of vote, and then the people continue to vote it back into existence. So like, and this has happened like several times. So like,
has there been a vote though? Don't they always just kill everybody until?
No, I didn't think. Yeah, I think they implied that it's not a vote. They just
or they stop it before it gets to the vote. Whatever. It's happened multiple times.
Yeah,
the point is, it's happened multiple times, and they always push it down. Yeah. So Joe kind of has this interesting like revelation that when they say peacekeeping, what they mean is kill 500 people that are protesting, like, you know, like kind of thing. So she's like, you guys kill people all the time. You just don't have any emotion about it. So it doesn't register as like the murder. The fact that the murder is important is that it's like the first emotional kill in like X amount of years. But like, turns out they just put down uprisings all the time. Like it's no big deal. And I guess that's sort of what the AI person is she's just trying to continue the status quo, like keep like the economy moving forward and all this, you know, hidden emotional crap happening, but they're aware of it. So who cares? It drives the economy and keep everybody down so she can stay rich kind of thing. But her logic at the end doesn't make any fucking sense. She's just like, just murder them all. I'm like, and she's like, Joe's like, murdering them all doesn't work. Like they're just, what are you doing kind of thing. And it's a very weird ending to the whole.
Well,
I think that was the point though, right? Because like billionaires are killing the planet, and it's like, what are you going to do when everyone's dead? And
yeah, what are you? She literally says the line like, "What are you going to roll over an empty city? Like, what the fuck are you doing?" You know, like at this point, like, why are you ordering an orbital bombardment kind of thing? And you're just like, you're making sense, Joe. I don't know what to tell you. Like that person's crazy.
Yeah, well, she makes a comment like, well, it'll be fine because I can save this one server and we can just live there. So I think it very much is a criticism of this kind of like, you know, Jeff Bezos with his dick-shaped spaceship taking himself into space.
And
you know, I think it's
and like 3 people to Mars. Yeah.
The last 2 issues do suffer a little bit from, this isn't a Jemisin specific thing. It happens a lot, but like basically the typical mystery thing where everything gets just wrapped up and it's like colors and movement and don't read too deeply here, but things make sense kind of, and then we're done. And there are a little bit of, I don't want to say plot holes as strong, but yeah, it's a little bit roughshod of running through the end and just saying like, this is what's happening. Just accept
you guys had mentioned how like you felt like it kind of dropped off after 6 or 8 issues, and like maybe the last 4 issues could have been more like 2 issues kind of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know if I felt that as strongly as you guys. I like, it seemed to me that it kept going pretty strong until like the last 2. Like every issue was sort of like another realization.
One thing that I love about this is one of the reasons I love Joe. I think in the last 2 issues, all of her dialogue is some variation of, this shit's insane. Y'all are crazy. What's going on? And I was just with her on all those comments. Like,
my every
last 2
comment.
issues were like, this is insane.
That's kind of what I was trying to say about the AI person. Like it got to the point where I was like, what are you even trying to accomplish? And Joe is literally saying that in the book. And I'm like, well, bravo. At least someone's saying it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about the peacekeepers mowing down the people and like that whole like plot shift, like the Nah guy on the counselor Nah guy with the big dick? It turns out he ordered them to do it, and she feels betrayed by him, kind of thing, because they've gotten close.
His through line at the end felt like one of those "don't read too closely, trust me, it makes sense" kind of things.
Yeah,
because like what he was ordering around, I mean, I guess it all adds up, but it felt a little, again, just a little clumsy. So he was he was involved with selling Switch Off in the black market so that he could buy ships from space to fight the AI when
he knew was plotting against him, sort of like, he knew the coup was coming. So him and the plant guy, what was his name? Averup, yeah. Him and Averup knew the coup was coming. So they had this big plot to bring in a Green Lantern to like kind of toss stuff up and make it, you know, like unpredictable, so to speak. So like it would throw off the coup. And then as that was going on, he's like feeding her stuff like, why don't you go here and check this out? Why don't you go here and check this out? And as she discovers more, she's like, you're the one doing this? Why don't you just fucking tell me? You know, like kind of thing, because he would have been arrested and it wouldn't have worked, you know, kind of thing. So he had to like give her piecemeal, like, why don't you go check out this building that I own selling the drug switch off, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not sure he would. So I just don't know if the direct route of just him and Averup saying Abbes of Glory is planting a clue, here's the proof. Like, would that really not have worked? Are we sure that
I don't know.
Worked?
It's like, set up to say the council is majority vote, and if they fucking majority voted the Green Lantern there, they could have just majority voted the emotional exploit not to be taken anymore. And it's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Also, you killed these people, these protesters as part of your plan, and then you're making people make memes on switch off, but that one is slaves, but you didn't know they were slaves, and I'm gonna hire the kleptocracy.
it's all a little convoluted.
Yeah, that
and
part
it's meant to keep the mystery going for the reader, but at the same time, you're just like,
I think that's why it dragged to me. Back to that whole like point, why did it drag? It's because like the first 5 issues were like a murder mystery, not murder mystery because you know who did it, but it's got more of a noir vibe to it. And then you get more into like the social commentary, but it was kind of such a hard shift for me that it took me a minute to kind of appreciate what the second half was doing. And then once you kind of are getting into that with them, like understanding how the AT-ATs are the lower class society and going into what their society's like, all of a sudden it's the end of the comic and everything's wrapped up. And it was kind of like, all right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting to me is, so a lot of this is commentary on our current world state. And our current world state is bonkers. So I didn't know if for example, you mentioned the hot Nah guy. Who was like, oh yeah, I fund this on lots of factories and some of them have slaves. Sorry, I don't know. But that's kind of like how billionaires are in our world of like, oh, we're all greed and sustainable. Oh yeah, well that one factory does have child labor. Like, sorry, some of them have kid laborers, but so I didn't know how much of it was trying to comment on how our economic system works and what of it was just maybe.
I thought maybe like the slow, because so there's a few issues like post issue 6 or so, it starts to slow down a little bit, but I didn't find it. I have a tendency to dislike regular comics these days because it's always on to the next thing and there's no like status quo. It's one of the reasons I used to love Legion back in the day, and I still kind of like talk about how much I love Legion of Superheroes, because they would like have a big adventure, but then there'd be like a few issues of just them like existing or like having relationships, or like the characters would grow, or like these people go out on a date, or like that kind of thing. And it's just like you get to live a little slice of their life, and then it moves on to like the next big story arc with this villain comes out of nowhere, blah 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 blah. So I really actually enjoyed these issues in this comic where like after that peaceful protest not peaceful protest, after the protesters get shot and killed, like she takes a few issues to like go to their funerals and like mourn and be upset about the fact that these people died and trying to move on with her investigation. And she's torn on whether or not she's even there for any purpose, kind of thing. And like, why don't you just send me home if you don't want me to solve this murder kind of thing, that kind of, and I really enjoyed those issues. So yeah, like not a lot's going on necessarily, but like, it kind of like slowed down and gave you a beat to like breathe for a minute and kind of weirdly enjoy the fact that she was going to funerals and stuff, like kind of like showing her as a full character as opposed to just rushing on to the next point. And I thought that might have been what you were talking about. That's why I was going to be like, no, absolutely not. I love those parts. But, obviously I know now that what you're referencing, but that was one of the things I was like, I really liked those issues, like where she took time to get to know the dude's wife that got murdered in the first book. And
I did enjoy her. It wasn't like a true struggle. Like her morals and ethics are clear, but there were times where there's one issue where she's like, I don't want to fight police officers. I don't want to fight police officers.
Yeah.
And she's, trying to, even with the protesters, she's like, look at all this damage and destruction. Was this really worth it? And the one woman says, my husband's dead. Yes, it was worth it. And it kind of like, she kind of has an epiphany of, these aren't just aliens. They're beings with feelings, even though they're oppressed, and kind of I guess figuring out her purpose on that planet. Like, who is she really serving? Who's she really protecting? All that was interesting to me to see that kind of subtle development in her character.
Yeah, going back to another thing Patrick mentioned earlier, I sort of wish we'd gotten a deeper look at AT-ATs because I thought that was really interesting. So
yeah, the look we got for
Joe,
them was very brief. You're right.
yeah. So for one issue, Joe and I Can has Earth memes or cat memes, whatever her name was, her AI.
Cat.
I can has Earth memes. She was one of my favorites. She was second favorite character behind Joe. Yeah,
she was great.
Oh yeah, she was
so
great.
There's one issue where she and
I can
Joe
has
get
Earth
into-
stuff.
I can has
Earth stuff.
Yeah.
So what does she calls her? Can has a lot? Is that what it is?
Can has, yeah. She calls her
can has, yeah.
But so one issue they go to Atville and you kind of get a look at the AI world, but I sort of wish we could have gotten a deeper because so in this construct, so the AIs are basically the second-class citizen minorities of the world. The Na and the Katopli, the physical beings, are just kind of living life on these platforms. The AT-ATs are bound to certain servers that can apparently be shut down and whatever.
Yeah, they're also bound to like holographic projectors that allow them to be in a room.
Yeah,
and if that's turned off, like they can't even be in the room.
And then you find out their substance is emotional content, like the biological emotions that lead to online content and memes and humor and emotional reactions to memes are what feed the AT-ATs.
Yeah.
So you find out that basically for the past 2,000 years, they've just been under the poverty line, barely subsisting on whatever emotional content they can.
So not only are they starving, but also time for them works differently. So like a minute to them is like a year. So like basically Joe's like, wait, you've been doing this for 50 years and it's been like a day, or something like that. And she's like, yeah.
They also make the point that if you're at that if you can materialize in the physical world, then you're wealthier, or it costs a lot of money for them to even access a holographic projector.
But there is some hope at the end, though. It does seem like the referendum will maybe roll back the emotion block.
It does, so yeah. It seems like she's in for like a brave new world, kind of, so to speak, in terms of her spending the next 6 months there.
The AT-AT situation gets a little better.
I thought it was interesting that Glory was the main villain, and I wish there was a little bit more development with her, just because she's the main villain.
I agree.
Maintain the status quo, and it's her people that are suffering the most from the current status quo. But it kind of just it also makes sense that there's just some people who are greedy pieces of shit. And power is
because she's just greedy, and she's one of the people that's like up high and doesn't care that everyone's suffering.
Yeah. Well, there's been a lot written about, I don't know how to describe it, like the upper echelons of oppressed people who are treated well by the oppressors, and how that, like the 58% of white women voted for Trump in 2016 or whatever, even though he's a misogynist, but conservatism treats white women well in some circumstances. Back in the house slave in slavery days, like we have examples of certain elements of oppressed people being treated
like
nicely.
Dobby the house
they become part. They become part of the apparatus of oppression.
The Na counselor comes to talk to her at her apartment, and I just thought this is just an interesting art note. They're talking and having like an actual emotional. It's right before they actually bone and have sex for the first time. The camera zoomed out, so like they're blurry in the background, and it's like on a shelf of hers, and there's like a Gundam-ish toy, and there's like a Jon Stewart like kind of bobbleheady like Funko Pop looking toy, and then there's like another action figure, and then it sort of looks like a Sailor Moon-esque kind of thing. And I liked how all of those were on her shelf. Like she has these little things, like she brought them behind me. She has all these little nerd things behind her on a shelf. And I just thought that was really funny because like as it's continuing to progress in the art, like you see like when she's flying, Patty already mentioned this, but when she's flying, little baby versions of Jon Stewart and Superman are flying next to her at one point, and then like obviously the Gundam suit is a big thing that happens later, and then also like the like all of these things like play out in like her her constructs later, and I thought that was pretty cool. Little nod to like, oh, she actually likes this nerd stuff.
Yeah.
From Earth. It's not just like, I know these cartoons exist on Earth, and I have a Green Lantern ring, so I'm going to make stuff. Like, she's actually a nerd and has all these little toys behind her. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, oh, she's definitely a nerd. I mean, we mentioned too, right? Anytime she's flying, using weapons, Gundam stuff, there's always like little.
Yeah, I love the little
flying
spark
around her.
of
She's-
the way that her suit forms around her body, and there's always spark of energy around, like as it's forming up around her. There's always these little shards of Green Lantern construct, like as her glasses form and as her costume is forming on. It just looks great the whole time. It can't get over enough about how innovative and interesting he made the Green Lantern constructs, and like. She even chose like one of those extendable batons, like a cop would have, like as a weapon at some point. And when she turned into a Gundam, she just had a bigger version of that. Yeah. I was like, that's pretty funny. And like even the Gundam had like a giant horn of a head, and it's like it's just her hairstyle, like it's just her hair, but it's like it looks like a Gundam helmet, but it's a big, just little stuff like that. I'm like, that's fucking cool. Like just little details of thought. When she's fighting in space later and she has those like Gundam wing kind of like jetpack things floating behind her, and she's like flying around, and the way she's pivoting. And then one of them is even a little damaged later. And I was like, this is fucking awesome. Like he's crushing it.
Also, when she's fighting in space, she kind of uses her Gundam apparatus to like form in front as a gun.
Yeah, and she like makes a big gun. Yeah, there's so many cool things. And also I loved when she made the big gun, her ring was like 25%. She's like, fuck, I should have stuck with the baton. You know, like I'm like that was great. There's little stuff like that just made it really good. I thought they were gonna do more of a fuck with her based on how much energy she had left, but they really didn't.
So that was
because they hinted at it early.
Really came into play. Yeah, I thought there would be in the climax some moment where like
she had low energy, so to speak, but like
out, and it would be, but it never had. She just kind of won.
Yeah, because they make this specific.
Well, she stopped using it.
She's once if she allows it to reach 0, then it's dead for like 5 days.
Like 5 days or something like that.
It did make
they gave you a
that,
timeline.
Yeah, the fact they gave you that specific timeline,
and they give you the impression she's being watched, or this is being observed, not just it's being told to us. And then you're like, oh, well, it's being observed by the villain, obviously. Like just as a reader. And then later on, you're just like, oh, they're going to do something where they're going to like feign a big thing where she has to use a lot of her power, but then really that was not something that was a real threat. And then later on the real threat's going to come. And that, cause I had this all mapped out in my brain. I'm like, oh, clearly this is going to happen A, B, C. And it doesn't sort of. And I'm like, well, why did they, that was weird that they set that up.
It's one of those things where it's like not like where she misses the mark with a superhero story, because that's a very classic superhero trope where the hero loses their powers but still does something heroic.
I'm also glad it didn't happen.
I just thought
it's weird to set up and not bring about, but like I'm also glad. I'm like, I mean, if anything, she should have. It could have been a throwaway line of dialogue at the end. Like she flies to the captain's ship of the one ship that she's worried the most about. She rips the hole open and goes inside. Would have been kind of cool if her ring just sputtered out and died right then. Like if she was like, oh, I have to shift. I can't just keep fighting. Like I need to get inside the ship and talk to somebody because I don't have any power left, kind of thing. The only other time it made sense is when she was in the AT-AT world and she was like, how much time, how much energy, like how much time will I have inside the AT-AT world if I use the rest of my ring? And the ring is like 6 minutes. And she's like, cool, let's do it. And you're like, oh shit, that's not a lot of time. But that was really the only real pivotal moment where she was like running out for real, kind of thing. But it was still an interesting idea. I liked it though.
Yeah. So another thing, one of her constructs, she had a giant fist that said "Pot of Will" on it. That I didn't. But I looked it up, and that's a manga anime reference to something called Soul Eater, apparently. So.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Anyway, there's also
she had a weird shield at that point too.
Yeah, but just an example of there's apparently just tons of anime references.
I think a lot of video game.
Yeah, there's a lot of Akira when she's in the AT-AT world.
Like I guess she just had free reign in the AT-AT world. Like even the way Icon has fights, like the different art styles that like she's just able to transform into these different things. It was all very intense.
Can is literally wearing Kaneda's jacket. She's like, what are you so obsessed with? Why are you so obsessed with the motorcycles? And she's like, I don't know. I just thought that was funny. There's the AT-AT world fight was pretty fucking cool, I thought.
I did like, the motorcycle thing was kind of funny. Of just like, why do you like motorcycles so much?
Well, that's when she's wearing Canada's jacket, like a second later, because they
she
shift to a
has
diner.
kind of Canada's motorcycle. Too.
I mean, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, but so we do end up finding out that like the murder happened because an AT-AT hacked into basically a biological person's mind.
Yeah,
took them over,
which apparently is not hard to do.
And it's called riding meat. Riding meat is what they say.
Riding meat salad, I would call it.
Right. No, a meat salad is something you, but they specifically say riding meat, which sounds pretty dirty. But yeah, they do establish that that's something AT-ATs can do is take over your body. So don't ask GPT too many questions.
Right.
Lest
we're all just an electrical system waiting to be hacked by an AI.
Yeah. Lest Chat GPT look back into you and reveal the true nature of the abyss, and then you're gone.
But so it does. If you ride someone's meat, it does kill them. So that's how Councilman Averup dies. Is he gets possessed by one of these AT-ATs, and so Joe and Councilman Averup had formed a special bond because Averup said she smelled delicious, which meant that he respected her. And so she's pissed that he's dead.
Smells delicious means you're respectful is like hilarious to me. So we used to eat you a long time ago. So if I say you smell delicious, that means I think you're pretty cool.
Imagine if cows became sentient and you're talking to a cow and you're like, you look delicious.
It would look so good. Also, looks like you would keep me warm, like a leather jacket.
But it would be a compliment. It's like, I respect you as a
very complimentary
person, and you look delicious. I would eat you yesterday, but I also respect you as a person. Cow.
I did weirdly enjoy their relationship though, because even when
it was very touching. Yeah, it was very charming.
When he's explaining like the process of eating another sentient being and what that means to them, and not being able to do that leaves this like cold ache in their body. And Joe's reaction is always just terror. And he just always apologizes, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot you're not from here. I'll go."
Well, I thought it was charming too because the other like male.
My apologies, you're a newcomer. I've forgotten.
But also, the other male relationship she has with the Knock counselor is very kind of like sexual, creepy immediately. So I thought it was a charming, non-sexual friendship.
That's why I thought it was so creepy when he was like, "I'm on." She's like, "Oh shit, you're on split off or what the fuck, switch off." And he's just like, "Yeah, I am.
Is it really... Sorry, is it my audio or do you guys hear that too? Do you guys also hear that?
No, I don't hear anything.
Does this pass? I was gonna sing the. Does this pass the Bechdel test? The Bechdel test. The Bechdel test. Does this pass the Bechdel test? The answer's probably no, except it's yes.
But it does. Yes. Yeah. Unsurprisingly,
we finally got one, guys.
I kind of knew going in that it was a sure bet that this would at least pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
Written by a woman main character.
But she talks
pretty sure at some point she'd talk to just a woman about not men.
Well, she and Sizzin talk about stuff. I can't use I can has because she's AI, so she's not really a woman. Can we be honest?
She identifies as a woman.
Can we be honest? She's not really a woman. She's
she's not real. Sorry.
But she does. She does talk. Look.
She's just a computer.
Doesn't one of the cops say that? He's like, they're not officially alive. They're like, officially? What?
Oh, yeah.
I think that goes into the minorities. But anyway, they're not. She's not really a woman. She's an AI.
Yeah, but she has plenty of conversations with women about politics or their relationships or food or anything. There's a lot of examples of
the one exception I'll say, and this is what I will make my creepy comment, at Blaze of Glory, she is all woman. I'm a big fan of Blaze of Glory.
So one exception.
One exception.
The rest of those AI, they're not really alive. They're just computers.
But Joe has, again, with Sizzin, though, Sizzin is a real woman, and they have discussions not about male protagonists. So
about a lot of things, yeah.
This
also, Makamori test-wise, crushes it. Sojourner goes on
the Makamori test, we've talked about this. It's BS. Even Makamori doesn't pass the Makamori test. It's a contrived test.
It's the point is, she has a very strong character arc throughout the series. I really disagree with you. I feel like the other one's more
I don't know. Anyway, it also passes the sexy lamp test, although I wouldn't turn down a lamp shaped like Joe.
I think the only sexy lamp here is the knock counselor guy.
He is a tall, sexy lamp.
He's just eye candy.
He is eye candy. Wow.
7 fingers.
He looks
where
good.
are those going?
Oh, I know where they're going. I could tell you where they're going, but I'd have to censor.
I'd be really concerned about where all the poison barbs are at all times.
Yeah.
Well, that's all part of the man. That knock counselor is man. He is a tall drink of man. Yeah, he's ripped too. Like it shows them in bed. He's all ripped.
Oh, that's true. I was gonna say, did anyone even come close to Snyder Zeus in this? But I guess
I'd say Joe's on the scale. Did you see her arms?
Yeah, she's on.
Yeah, she's pretty ripped.
A register on the scale.
There was that one random at that like uncovers her power weaknesses, and he's enormous for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know if they count, but since they're not officially,
I mean, they're not officially alive.
Yeah, and so for first-time listeners, we're talking about a scale that measures someone's rippedness from 0 to Zeus from the Snyder cut of the Justice League.
Yeah, which is impossible to achieve.
No,
but also their proportionality. It's not just rippedness; it's about the proportion.
Yeah, because the Hulk registers on the scale, but he's not a 10.
No,
it's about
because he's all abnormal. He's all normally shaped and proportioned.
Yeah, it's about perfection carved from marble.
Yeah. It's about subjective perfection.
Yeah. So
what would you rank Joe on the Snyder Zeus scale?
I mean, I don't know, not that high, but on there, like a 5, maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, I was gonna say a solid 5. Yeah. Something we haven't really discussed that I sort of love is the fact that she is an emotional being, and like there are these really cool moments when something is happening, and it's usually human rights involved. And her rage just spikes, and she like unleashes, and it's fucking awesome. Like every time she's like, "What did you?" And it's like a Green Lantern energy like erupts around her, like she's a Super Saiyan or something, and just always does something cool after. Like even when she blows up the tank, like kind of just like, does that seem? Does that seem aggressive or whatever she says? But like,
I think she's like, does that seem peaceful or something? I don't. That was a great moment. Issue
basically
3,
threatening them, like, I will crush you. Like, what do you do? You're killing innocent people. Like, I will crush you. You know, and there's a lot of those unleash a Green Lantern power. It's kind of cool the way her power manifests at certain instances of emotional stress. You know, she has those moments where she's just like, "Oh, I'm a Green Lantern, bitch! Like, I will fucking fuck you up." I really enjoyed those. Like
the best
eruptions.
The best eruption like that, I think, was when the protesters get fired on. The last page of that issue is her unleashing, but her internal monologue just says, "Oh, you emotionless motherfuckers." And then issue four, the quote that starts off issue 4 is, "I ain't about to be nonviolent, honey." I enjoyed the way issue 3 ended and how issue 4 started. The one other thing I want to make about when the AT-ATs, when they meat ride, it kills the person. Yeah. And I enjoyed the beat or the scene when they're interrogating the murderer. And he's like, "I'm really sorry I did that." And he was like, "I could feel her die when I did it. And no one told me that was going to happen. And we're artificial intelligence. We're not supposed to know what it feels like to die." And he's like, "Do you know what it feels like?" And he's like losing his mind. He starts crying.
Yeah, he's like freaking out.
"Do you know what it feels like to die?" I was like, "Oh shit, that's pretty insane."
Yeah, well, they mentioned that murder, like riding meat and murdering them, corrupts the AI.
Yeah. And they become a virus, and they're put down, and that's when they're not officially alive comes into play at that moment. Yeah, I also really like just a subtle art thing. Instead of just showing energy around her fist all the time, it was always like a ring around her fist with like trails of energy off of it. I really enjoyed like just the subtle like framing of her fist with the ring on it, like just with the green energy ring. Like it was pretty cool. Like there's just a lot of really cool subtle art choices with the constructs. I know I've said that like 10 times now, but just really, really good design work on his part. Like crushing it out, man. You know, like it made Green Lantern interesting for the first time in forever. And it's the writing as well, of course, but visually pretty stunning book. I found the architecture a little too ethereal. Like I had a hard time kind of like understanding where she was standing some of the times. Like it was like just buildings were shaped so weirdly, and You know, like every time you're standing somewhere, you could be like upside down on a platform, like facing another way. Like, so there's a lot of weird, like spatial reasoning going on within the book, like that I found kind of like jarring sometimes, but for the most part, spectacular work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, all the costume design was great. I like the color palette he used.
Yeah.
Because he did the coloring as well as the art, right?
Yeah, because I think it's like just 100% digital.
I think he did everything. But
also the light
his
effects, like every once in a while, like because of the glasses and the way they're shaped and they're kind of like bent at the nose, like sometimes one full half would be like reflecting light, but the other one you could see her eye. There was just a lot of little subtle, wow, that's really fucking cool looking, good job, you know, kind of thing as you're reading. Sometimes it's hard when there's so much eye candy, like in this book, to like pause for a second and enjoy what you're looking at. But man, he really did like do a lot of really good work just in the constructs and really everything. But
yeah, I like the use of different focus levels. Like there's a scene early on where they catch the murderer in the interrogation room who killed the Katopli. And they look really out of focus and like fuzzed out in the foreground. And in the background is like a very detailed kind of normal image of Joe and the other police officers. So stuff like that is kind of throughout. It's kind of just lots of cool little effects.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's still a comic book and it's still comic book art. It's still drawn very comic booky, and there's a lot of manga influence, and there's a lot of like extended foreshortening and proportions and like all kinds of crazy stuff going on with like the lighting and all of the. But there is also a decent amount of just like cinematography going on with like you were saying, like the fuzzed out background, like, you know, what's in focus, what's not in focus kind of thing. And really good work, man. It was very refreshing.
All right. Should we wrap it up? Anything? I think we've covered most of the big, again, we're not going issue by issue, so we're just giving kind of major takes, but how about, do either of you have a favorite quote from?
Oof, no, honestly, I mean, and this is my own fault. I read them, but I didn't pay like super close attention. I like absorbed it as I was going, and it referenced what was happening in each issue, and I enjoyed them, but I didn't like put them away and go, oh, I like that one a lot or anything like that. So no, not really.
There were a few I liked. All right, so one, I don't know if I'm going to pronounce this right, but Audre Lorde, and her quote was, "The master's tools will never dismantle the master's house," which I was pretty interesting. I like that one. Oh, here's a pretty good one. I mean, Jimmy Baldwin always has great quotes, but not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. So just a few little, I liked all the quotes they picked. I just thought they did a good job with all that. Yeah, so I enjoyed it. I don't know. We've already gone over the reasons. Loved Joe as a Green Lantern. I like the sci-fi setting. Enjoyed the topical commentary on our own society. Love the art. Read it. I'd recommend it. I mean, I know you might be listening to this out of order. Before this, we read Avengers Forever, which really made me question whether I should read a comic again. This was so much better than that. It was a breath.
Trying to pick the next book after Avengers Forever for us was like, do we even want to keep reading comics?
Yeah. But this one was better. So I enjoyed
it's good.
Sector and recommend Far Sector. That's my take.
Yeah, I mean, plus one, all that. I love the art, and the writing was strong, and Joe as a character is fantastic, and I'm excited to know that she's headed or already in kind of mainstream DC. It will be interesting to see how other writers handle her, and if they
that's my trepidation on that.
Again, this story was more of a commentary and showing the parallels, like holding up a mirror to our current society and all the ills with, you know, voter suppression and how classism and elitism and all that stuff. I loved all of that. But as we kind of said, the climax isn't your typical superhero climax. There is fighting and action, but the main climax is Glory gives an order to the fleet to basically kill everybody, and it's Joe talking to that person, reasoning with them, as opposed to fighting them, which is the whole point. But I just felt like the story suffered from not having a very strong central villain character that is usually in most comic book stories. So I think that's why the climax fell a little short for me, because there was no real conflict built up over the story between Glory and Joe. And I wish we had a little bit more of a character development with Glory. So her becoming the villain, or the realization she's the villain, or just knowing she's the villain from the get-go. It was kind of like I almost felt like they teased it, because Marth says, it's all up to her. And Joe's like, who's her? And it's like, oh, well, it's Glory. Like, who else would it be? But it just kind of fell flat for me there, I guess. But overall, definitely recommend it. It's just for the character of Joe alone. She's one of the best characters I've been introduced to in a very long time.
Completely agree. I think I don't necessarily need the villain to be developed more per se, because it was a mystery in terms of who it was. But you're right. I don't think it was like handled super well. And then so when you get to the end and it is revealed, it does sort of fall a little short, just in terms of like not truly understanding who the character is and kind of understanding their motivations. It's just kind of like held behind the curtain for too long, like maybe to like keep it a mystery. Whereas if they had brought it out a little earlier and they were actively working against that person a little more in the light of day, so to speak, might have made it a little better. But first comic you ever wrote, good job, Jemisin. Like, crushed it. Made an amazingly interesting character, took the concept of Green Lantern ring and put a little twist on it, and it was totally plausible. Like, because the Owens are completely able to just do whatever the fuck they want with those rings. So why not make one that's slightly different? I loved that. The art, Jamal Campbell crushed it with the art. I've said it basically this entire episode. Loved everything he brought to the table in terms of like making that world building that Jemisin created visually interesting, and bringing those three races to life. Like, they were very visually distinct. Like, it wasn't like each race kind of looked the same, and it like you could just see them in the crowd and go, that's that one, that's one, like that's the plant guys, that's the like it was very easy to pick them out even from afar. So like he did a really good job illustrating what she did such a good job building with her story. And great. Joe was obviously amazing. So like in terms of a Green Lantern, I don't think I could have invented one better than this one. Like that. Like, that's in a world where we have so many Green Lanterns as it is in DC Universe. Like, trying to make one new and interesting is pretty difficult. And Jemisin crushed it out. Like, this Joe is an amazing character. And my only trepidation, like I was saying, Patty, is yours. It was like, yeah, it's great that she exists, and I can't wait to see her in other books. I don't feel like she'll be handled as well or with as much thought, like as went into this book. And also being young animal, it made this story interesting because they kind of just put it off in its own little universe. And like, so, because it is so far away from the rest of the DC universe, they could kind of do whatever they wanted. And that made it more interesting because it just, the gloves are off. You can kind of do whatever you want to do with the story. And it made for an awesome story. Yeah. Far Sector. Definitely read. That's a really good book.
I don't know if there's a point worth mentioning, but I think the reason why it threw me off that Glory was the villain was so much character development time was spent on Marth and like the mystery of him being the villain. And then I think it would have been, I don't know. I think that's also kind of like, well, who is the villain if it's not Marth? And it's like, oh, it's this bitch. And
he sort of was half the villain.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
He's not a virtuous character.
Yeah. No, I agree. But the other thing, it's the standard mystery catch-22 of like, if you develop the character, it's obvious that's the twist. But then if you don't develop the character, it's a disappointing twist. So I'm not sure how to handle that. But I agree with you. Glory was not, I mean, she had 10 lines in the whole 12 issues.
Yeah, she just wasn't featured too much.
But on the other hand, if she was featured more, it would be, you'd know right away, okay, well, she's the bad guy.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I agree with both of you on that. All right.
Anyway, awesome book. Read it.
Read Far Sector. We're out.
I think we did it, boys. I think we crushed comics for the week.
Well, we need a good journey.
Good journey. Thanks for joining us.
Goodbye.
On this
Goodbye.
journey.
All right.